And as my third series of thoughts, I thought I would talk about why now is still a great time to start a business. It is always darkest just before the dawn. And I have a gut feeling that now actually is a great time to take the plunge. There are still plenty of fears and plenty of negative news out there about, deficits and oil price, double-dip recession. But actually, technology and global markets are creating real advantages for anyone tempted to give it a go. And the fact is that a new concern, a startup or an early stage business, will not be weighed down with the legacy issues like property or pension obligations that are holding back quite a few incumbent, long established players. And amongst the reasons why I think now is a good time is, for example, the fact that the internet has made it so much easier to experiment than in the past. I mean, building an online presence costs less than it ever did. Not long ago, I redesigned my little website for about 1,500 quid in a few weeks. I mean, you can reach the whole world through the internet. It's obviously fantastically crowded, but there are also billions of consumers connected to it and more every month who might see your ads or buy your products. And frankly, if your idea fails, too bad. Shut it down and try another. It's cheaper and quicker to fail than it ever has been. And that's really important. I think the corporate life, to me and a lot of people I talk to, seems less appealing than ever before. Jobs for life have gone. Occupational pensions have gone. And who wants to slog away in a hierarchy their whole career anyhow? The truth is the freedom and satisfaction of self-employment are hard to beat. And of course there are lots of risks. But then, frankly, you might get sacked anyway if you work for someone else. And starting a company does give you the chance to achieve independence and self-determination. And if it succeeds, you really do get the rewards for your efforts rather than others taking the credit. Unquestionably, the world needs entrepreneurs more than ever, as our Prime Minister was saying just this weekend. New jobs and wealth creation spring principally from new companies. And I predict governments and societies will have to do more, and they say they're going to in the budget even, to encourage entrepreneurs in the years to come, from be it lower regulation, lower taxes, less bureaucracy, etc. And every policy maker I meet on either side of the political spectrum understands that only private enterprise can tackle the challenge of unemployment and generate the tax we need to address the sort of structural problems we have. There's certainly more advice and support for entrepreneurs than ever before. Events like this, inconceivable 5 or 10 years ago. You have books online, agencies, conferences, magazines, you name it. There are hundreds of places you can go, mostly free, to find ideas, recruit staff, secure premises, source IT, deal with legal accounting issues, mentors, and so forth and so on. There are more clubs and networks, more access to funding, to finding partners and reaching customers than there ever have been. And there are many more role models and mentors around when I started out in the 1980s. For example, there are now 70 university entrepreneur clubs. Such things didn't exist 25 years ago. It's easier to freelance and subcontract than ever before. I mean, nowadays virtual businesses are standard. Almost everything can be outsourced. Manufacture, R&D, fulfillment, logistics, administration, IT, you name it. And even providing those services itself creates lots of niche opportunities for entrepreneurs. I think there's talent galore looking to join in a new venture, more willing to work for a new venture than ever before. I think, just as I've said, it's not just the entrepreneurs that don't want the stifling, bureaucracy of big companies. People don't necessarily want to work for big companies anymore, so they're more willing to go and work for a startup. And I think that's really important. And actually, much of the stats I read suggest that big business is net shedding people, and certainly government is. So I think people will be more willing to throw their lot in with an emerging firm than perhaps during the good times. Unquestionably, premises and plant in most places are plentiful, rents are lower, landlords are more flexible on terms, lots of machines are in surplus. So there's more choice in all that sort of area than there has been for a while. I think for those who are unlucky enough to lose their job, perhaps if they've got the appetite, they should see that redundancy can be a beginning, not an end. And there are a lot of people who seize the day when they lose their job. And, you know, it's never a pushover, but for some, it allows them to pursue their dream and follow their passion. And is, in a way, I mean, I sort of, when I was in my mid-late 20s, I'd been running businesses, moonlighting on the side, and had been in denial about the fact that I was working for a big, boring bank. And I went to see my boss because I was very unhappy with some reallocation of work. And I said to my boss, now, if you know, I don't get reallocated back some of the tasks I had, I may have to consider my future here. And he said, well, you're not going to get reallocated what you want back. So I had to resign then, didn't I? And actually it forced me to go out and do what I should have done years before and work for myself. And, you know, even though my timing was awful because it was just prior to the last recession, nevertheless, there was no turning back. And often, you know, we approach the precipice in life and we need that push. And I would say for quite a few people, it requires, you know, a kick up the behind to force them out of their complacency and the apparent comfort blanket. But, you know, the older one gets, the more I realise that security is an illusion. There is no security. And there's this great myth that the majority of people are more scared of loss than they are desirous of gain. Such that they do these studies that show that people will turn down, statistically, a certain net gain because they get so worked up about losing what they've already got. And, you know, they fail to see that equity is an extraordinary thing, in a sense, because the worst that can ever happen, unless you are, and my one piece of advice to all of those who are at this point is never ever give a personal guarantee of any kind. Just don't do it. And if the bank asks for one, say no and find another bank. But with equity, the worst that you can lose is your equity. Whereas in theory, the upside is unlimited. I mean, it really is infinite on the upside. So as long as it's a not half bad idea, you know, it's a pretty good bet more often than not. And that fundamental truth about the unlimited upside of equity is something that I think a great many people just don't realise. They think it's somehow capped. And a final point, I think part-time is a way to get going. I mean, as I said before, when I worked for others, I moonlighted for several years. Weekends, evenings, holidays. I didn't take many holidays, but I sort of didn't care at that point. And I think by moonlighting, it gives you the experience, confidence, and in my case, it helped generate a little bit of capital. So I was actually that better prepared when I did, you know, take the plunge. I spend a lot of my time, you know, meeting and talking to entrepreneurs. Indeed, it's why I do what I do, because I think they're sort of an extraordinary, rare breed who are, you know, incredibly dynamic and interesting to be around and be with and make life more exciting in general in all sorts of ways, good and bad. And I am endlessly fascinated by them. And these days I'm, amongst other things, chairman of the advisory board of Fast Track, which ranks Britain's fastest growing companies. And, you know, some of those are truly spectacular. I'm endlessly impressed by the vision and energy displayed by the founders of the companies they involved. And they are the lucky ones, if you like, the clever ones, who know that the agonies and the trials are worth it. And, you know, obviously no one believes starting something from scratch is ever a breeze. But, as my namesake Samuel Johnson once said, he that labours in any great or laudable undertaking has his fatigues first supported by hope and afterward rewarded by joy. So, following in his words, I would encourage those of you who have the appetite to go for it. Good luck if you're here seeking capital. And I think you should feel proud of yourself because, by God, we need you. Thanks very much.